Okay, now do it. The ringtone? You like it? Yeah, me too. It's, like a good place to be when there's too much other stuff happening out there. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erica, Ali, Michael, and Krissy. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with us. It's been really interesting and really inspiring. It's watching films like Loop, really, which makes me proud to be part of this community and this industry, making films which talk about underdog characters, delicate themes, or which have a very important moral at the end. I think you did a great job, and you did it in one of the best studios of animation around the globe. So fantastic job. Yay. Well done, guys.
Thank you, Simone.
As Erica said, we have Ere. Ere, just show yourself and introduce yourself quickly, maybe. Ere is an animator currently working at Jellyfish Pictures, and he's also become a board member of SIGGRAPH London. So if you have animation-related questions, where is he? I cannot see him.
I'm here. My camera's on, but I'm not sure if...
There you go.
Perfect. So if some animation questions arise, both Ali and Ere can talk about them and try to answer. So I have a list of questions I'd like to go through, but since I'm a bit greedy and selfish, I will ask you my own question first, okay? There is one moment of the short, which is my favorite, is this very delicate moment where Renee touches the reeds, and then Marcus touches the reeds. And for a second, Marcus stops talking, because he talks a lot in the film. And in that moment, there is a magical moment in which transcends really verbal communication. They didn't need words anymore, and they sort of connected using an ancestral language, really, which was born to nature, born to touching the reeds, touching grass with your hands. I love that moment. What was the idea behind it? It's like showing a way for the two of them to connect without words.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. In the story process, I think I knew that I like doing that, and that there's that feeling. If you feel that feeling on your hands, it's a really amazing feeling. And that it's one of those things that when you're a teenage boy, I think it's very rare that you allow yourself the opportunity to feel those feelings, right? But for Renee, because she is a person who's so driven by her sensory experience, and in the backstory, that's Renee's favorite place on the lake, and that's where she's always going to go. But and people who know her, like the counselor at the beginning, they'll take her there right away. But in this story, she has to find a way to get there. To do that feeling. And I just felt like when I was writing it, I knew she wanted to go there, but I didn't know that he needed to go there until you're writing and you put her hands on it. And then you're like, he's watching that and he wants to feel it too. And it's a moment of amazing disarmament for boy stuff, right? To me, I love having this boy character who sits so much in that, I always think of when he's doing that, it's really like a modified J-stroke, not that hard. When he goes into his sort of, I'm going to say it, mansplaining, because to me, mansplaining is just a joy in technique, that you have a joy in knowledge and that you want to share it. And sometimes we do it a little too, there are those of us who do film splaining, but I loved that Marcus, he's going to let go of so many things that are his boy-centric stuff and just feel something and be there with her, because she also isn't going to judge him. I think her lack of language, he's not going to feel some repercussion from that action of sensitivity. So I love it that it was, when that picture came into my head, I was like, oh, this is going to feel so good. And then to see it animated was like, oh, amazing. And those little reeds moving, because simming those little reeds was hard. Sorry, Ali.
No, I was going to add to that. I think this movie feels, it means some different things to many of us. So I think this movie, for me, and also learning so much about autism, means about heightened experiences and just being in the moment and taking everything in. I mean, Marcus in our film, he's been through those reeds and canoed this lake many, many times, but he's never stopped to actually feel the reeds. So that what, that moment means to me, at least, is just being present in a moment and observing the things around you that you otherwise take for granted.
That's great.
Great. Thank you guys for these answers. I would like to unite two questions here, which are mostly for Krissy and Michael, I think. How do SparkShorts work? How team and projects are chosen and organized? And also, what was the average length of one of these production? Like how long does it take to make a SparkShort?
The goal for SparkShorts is to get them done in 6 months. And so they're very, very fast. Some of the directors have come to the program with an idea already in mind, and some didn't. Some started writing right when they heard they were going to get a SparkShort. Like Erica is one of those ladders. Like she had to put this story together really quickly. As far as the crews go, it kind of works like most of the other things that Pixar do. They identify a producer and a director, and then you basically have to build a team and put together a schedule and a budget and see who's available and talk to your friends and kind of make it work. Michael, you have anything to add there?
I would just say, yeah, it's a great way for people who are between assignments on feature films, which is typical, to find work at the studio, learn new skills. It also makes a lot of financial sense for the studio because they don't like to see people between assignments. So if they, especially with the advent of Disney Plus being a great platform for these type of projects, it was really great that way. It's also a great way for people to stretch. If people want to learn more about being an effects artist and they've been a sim artist for years, or someone who's been a department manager and wants to be a producer. So it's a great opportunity to stretch your wings a bit.
Fantastic, thank you. Joseph asks, in the future, will you be showing more forms of disabilities?
I think that's going to depend on the director's drive to do so. Pixar is a very director-driven studio, so they're what people want to add. Although I have to say, like, animation has been experimenting, and I wonder if other parts that you guys know about, with sign language, with different, making sure that our crowds are full of all kinds of different people.
Yeah,
I'm just talking about main character kind of thing.
I think Erica's correct about, as far as features and who, main characters. I think that is all kind of driven by directors, but there is definitely a movement within Pixar to make sure that our crowds are very diverse, and that diverse in all kinds of ways. So, gender expression, age, body type, disability, ability, all as much of a spectrum as we can get in our crowd. So hopefully you'll see that in, or you have seen it in some of our recent past films, and hopefully you'll see much more of it in our upcoming films.
Awesome, and it's not the first time for you, Erica, that your protagonist is a person with a illness, or is a person which is a bit diverse, right? You have directed a live action short which has a main character which has got Down syndrome. Is that right?
Yeah. I directed a short film called So Much Yellow that had a child with Down syndrome in it. And then actually I did a feature documentary a while back called Snow Day that Krissy was the producer of. And that also had, it was an ensemble cast, but one of the characters in that cast also had disabilities. And I think I just come from my town had a lot of people with disabilities in it. And so I've always felt like their stories are intriguing, their challenges are fascinating, and then they're so infrequently represented. It feels like a really fun space to work in because you get to put things out on screen that people are like, oh my God, I've never seen that. And you're like, yeah, it's right here in the world. Like, just another person with a great story, but we don't always get to show them. So I definitely love, I think it's just also, you get to adapt your work process in a way that kind of gets you out of whatever cycles that you've created to just get through things fast. You're like, oh, I have to change. This is good creatively, you know?
Of course, yeah, yeah. We have a couple of more questions. Actually, this is not a question. M says, thank you for making this film. I'm a late diagnosed autistic, as well as a 3D animator, and it helped me relate to people whose autistic characteristics are very different to mine. So that's more of a thank you thought.
That's awesome.
From M.
Yeah, thank you.
But we also have a bit of a controversial question from Noor here. Hi, thanks for giving this chance. I have a model-wise question. I wonder, from the first second I watched Loop, that if René's model derived from Coco, it's like what was taken or borrowed from Coco, another Pixar character. In other words, did you guys at Pixar recycle the model to do Loop?
It's actually from, that's very good, Eagle Eyes. She is from the Toy Story 4 backlot of, actually both René and Marcus are characters that we pulled out of the backlot of Toy Story 4 because that was the unit that was active at that moment. And then Paul Abadilla, our phenomenal production designer, like gave them all this love and attention to create like a much more nuanced, you know, character than they would normally have. But it's a good, she's not Coco, she's Toy Story 4, which is, you can tell because she has very large feet, right, Ellie? Isn't that what you?
Okay.
The Toy Story 4 characters have bigger feet.
That's the first time I've ever heard it, but it sounds great. Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
This might have, I mean, you shortly mentioned this before, but how does Pixar chooses one particular topic to make a short? Who can pitch? I think you briefly mentioned that before, but what kind of policy do you have within Pixar for the SparkShorts? Are there some rules, or is there like a process you have, the artists have to follow in order to pitch in front of the studio? How does it work?
That's a great question. I think SparkShorts is a super new program for us. You know, we've only been making them for a couple years, and so we're still kind of figuring it out. The SparkShorts directors have come kind of from a little bit all over the studio. There are several story artists, several animators. Erica comes from the documentary background. We have one of our simulation TV experts directed a SparkShorts called Wind. So for now, they've come from all over, and we're sort of developing the process on how that works. We haven't really settled on anything yet.
But I think any project, correct me if I'm wrong, Krissy, but anything at Pixar, we put story first, right? If we have a good story, if anyone comes up with a good story, that's what we decides to make the effort to actually make the story, I think. So okay. there's no agenda or anything. Now we need to tell a story about this or that. It's if someone has a great story and we feel it's something that needs to be said and seen, that's when we invest in it.
Got it. Thank you. And I haven't received any question particularly regarding animation. So I'd love to ask Ere and Ali something. Being an animator myself, I need to ask you this. You talked, Ali, about the process behind, understanding the psychology of this character, and you touched different elements there, different supporting techniques that allowed you to animate René. But being an animator, like the first thing you do when you start animating a human character is shooting references of yourself, right? And you couldn't do this with René, of course. And there are chances to watch videos online, as you mentioned. You could go to communities and actually shoot videos probably of people with disabilities. But is there any other way you know, when you sat there at your keyboard, or when you were acting out the shot yourself in the room, is there any other technique you used to put yourself into Renée's shoes? Is there anything else you used?
No, I mean, it's all about making up the character in your head. Even if it was, say, a neurotypical character, is not always necessary, or is not always a must to shoot a reference. I myself, Era, please speak to this too. I sometimes, or most of the times, don't even shoot reference. I imagine the character in my head, and I'm imagining how he or she would move or perform or act in a certain scenario. But in order to get to that conclusion and having a clear picture in my head what the character would do, I would need to have done the research, right? So I would have to have these conversations with Erica about who the character is. Everyone in our team would have had it. Done the research, looked at references, and then you just make the character, at least this is my process, you just make the character in your head. And then when you channel it through, in this case, computer, you watch it and you analyze it in a room of, you know, people, and everyone gets to have a say and say if we think the performance is truthful and honest to what we're trying to say in this very particular moment in the film.
What he said.
Well,
No, but to kind of add on top, go for it.
No, you go and I'll ask you.
To kind of add on top of that, I think Ali kind of, you know, hit it on the head that it's something, it's all about believability. It's all about telling the truth. It's all about, you know, animating as truthfully as possible. And I think the number one thing that was really important is just being able to, you know, watch as much reference as possible, you know, gather as much information and just trying to digest as much as you can, so that when you jump to the computer to start animating it, you're doing it from a truthful place, you know? And what was great is that they recorded all the like dialogue sessions when they were recording Renée or when they were recording Madison. And, you know, it was great to kind of see what she was physically doing as she was doing those lines. It was, you know, a great place to kind of start from there. But yeah, I think for me, at least, it was just kind of being able to gather as much information and gather as much reference, and then just kind of animating as truthfully as possible.
Can I actually add something really fast to Simone?
Sure.
So these two guys, when I look at the film, there's two shots that I feel like are so core to the identity of both of those characters. So when we played the sound clip, you saw the shot of Renée just experiencing her cell phone, and this like very, very close up shot, which we actually ironically added super late in the film. And Ali had to animate it. How fast you did that so fast? It was so crazy. And it's like, it's one of my favorite shots because I think it came super late in the film. It was a moment where you had to feel what happiness felt for her, and it needed to feel specifically autistic, you know, her way of expressing that, but also needed to reach through the screen and let everyone know that this was a happy moment. And it was also like the establishing shot for Renée. And so I remember Ali and I were like, I was like, I want her to be like really, really close to the screen. Like, and he's like, we don't do that at Pixar very often. I'm like, but can we try? And he's like, yeah. And so we had this very, very close up. And we actually, Ali, do you remember the reference we use is from that film? I'm trying to remember the name of this.
Yeah. Swedish actress, Frida, help us. She was in Ex Machina.
Alicia Vikander?
Yes. Alicia Vikander.
Yes.
And she's listening to her headphones I'll find the film name. It was an amazing film. But it's so interesting because I'm like, I kind of wanted to feel like this. I wanted you to feel how much she loves what she's hearing and how connected to it she is. And so Ali was like, okay. So we looked at that, we looked at this, and all of a sudden he comes back with this shot, like, I don't know, a day later. And it's like that translation of like, here is Renée, here's her sense of joy. We're going to give it to you. It just was so perfect, Ali. Like, number one, I love that shot so much. but it came at the end of the process. And I think that that thing of like knowing your character, knowing how she'd respond to things, like really being, as you said, Ali, like being able to imagine that character in the situation and the feelings. Do you have anything else to say about that shot, Ali, that I haven't said?
No, I mean, that was, I think acting for me is 2/3 or maybe 80% just research and talk, and then 10%, 20% actually animating. It's all the research that leads up to the performance. And if you haven't done the research, then you're not going to come up with anything that is truthful, I feel. Another shot, it just made me think about it. Another shot that came very late in the film, you remember, Erica, is actually the last shot that we now feel is, makes the film, when she actually looks at Marcus. That connection shot wasn't there. I know, right? It wasn't even there. And
this is like a live action person. I would have just picked it up. It would be there because we would have shot it. And then it's like, oh yeah, we have to put it.
It wasn't even there. So we would watch the film. We're like, I think we need eye contact here. And there was like 2 days left of our schedule. So we just had to like put it in there, which now become the most, highest point of the film. But anyway.
Yeah. So there's that. And then I think when you look at, there's this series of shots they're from the point of view of Renee from below the canoe. And these shots are of Marcus reacting, and they're stills, which was controversial all the way through the project. People are like, you sure don't want to animate that? And I have to say, like, I constantly went back to that feeling. Ari did these. These were, I'm trying to remember, Ari, were the first or the second things you showed us? I can't remember if it was one or two.
I don't remember.
Because you also did a really cute little rowing test. So there was a rowing test. So we'd learn how to row, which Ari went to the canoe place where my friends work and fell in the water and got really wet. But the second thing was those still images of Marcus reacting. And I just felt like you don't need any more acting there. Like it is such, and I love when film stops and you get to have a sense of like time stands still and, but it was controversial because it's like, well, it's just a pose, so all the way through we're like, do we want to animate it? Do we not? But Ari, I remember when you did those, I was like, oh my God, this is the kid. This is the human, he's alive and he has such emotional power, and it's 4 or 5 still images. And I know so much about this little boy because of that. And so do you want to talk about for a second how you found those 4 poses or 5 poses in there?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think, trying to think back at it, I think that would have been my first or second assignment that Ali gave me. I think, it was during that whole exploration phase that was just kind of like, we need to find out who this character is. So I think it was really my main focus was just like, I want to try and draw from my experience of like, if I was in a situation where I just completely messed up, and how would I process those emotions? And I think it was, you kind of said, okay, we need 5 poses. And I was like, okay, well, this is how I would process those emotions with 5 poses. And again, I think it was just trying to draw from that place of that I know that's personal to me. Yeah.
It was amazing. I feel like,
yeah.
I think of you every time I see it still. Like I love the moment of receiving those things and then to see them through the end. Like you're just like how grateful you can be for the collaborators you have on a film. Like that's how I feel.
And your team did a great job. Well done, Erica, and well done, Ali. Your animation team did a brilliant job. Well done. I think we are running a bit late. So I would love to thank you once more on behalf of SIGGRAPH London. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your journey with us. And thanks to everyone who connected from all over the world to listen to this talk. Really, really exciting to see so many guests
so cool.
from many continents. So thank you so much. And good day, good evening, good night, if it's late, and hopefully talk to you soon.
Thank you guys. This was
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Simone.
much.
Thank
So
you.
much fun.